talking with Brandon Motley. Hi, Brandon.
Hello.
For everybody, Brandon owns and operates Motley Fitness, Nauvoo, Illinois, specializing in personal training. And prior to opening Motley Fitness, Brandon served in the military for 6 years as a special warfare TACP specialist, worked at a local gym, and traveled around the world. Brandon has been featured on multiple fitness websites, social medias, and was a member of the Hammer Strength Standard campaign in 2019. Brandon's a father of 2 girls, both under 3. He has been married since 2016, enjoys motivating others, and wakes up excited every single day to do what he loves. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
So, I wanted to kind of go over a few different subjects today. I think we're probably obviously going to start with the big one. You're kind of a fitness guy, right? You're really into fitness, and you're most especially, and we're going to touch on some of these subjects in my personal experience, just a very pleasing and positive person to be around.
Appreciate that.
So we'll just go into that. So one of my favorite features, like I said, is your positivity, a feature of your personality. And myself, you obviously know I'm not always that positive. Sorry. But so what I like to do is things that people are weak in certain areas, they have these wonderful people like yourself in the world to see as an example. So just kind of give me an idea, how does having a positive mindset affect you personally and, also in your business?
Honestly, I think it's everything. I wake up every day and immediately am thankful for each day that my feet hit the floor. I never have a negative mindset when I wake up in the morning. I feel like if you wake up with a negative mindset, the rest of your day is going to be set in that tone. Mm-hmm. So I just have nothing but positive thoughts. I'm excited for the day ahead. I look forward to seeing everybody at the gym and trying to get as many people motivated as I can, like you mentioned. But I think that positivity is contagious, so is negativity. So I just try to be as positive as possible and only surround myself with positivity to attract positivity.
Absolutely.
So and I think negativity, like you said, it can be a downward spiral, mm-hmm. and it can lead to depression, anxiety, and dark thoughts that I don't want to be a part of. You know what I mean? So
yeah, nobody does, hopefully.
But it's the reality of the world we live in, and there's many people that deal with those issues daily. So I do my best to try to lift those people up and get them out of that negative mindset, make them feel better about themselves, give them more confidence, make them feel happier about life in general, not only just the physical aspects of fitness or what I do at the gym, but I care much more about the individual as a person too, beyond the gym. So it's building relationships and not just trying to get members or, it's about the caring of each individual that comes through our door.
Yeah, that makes sense. I definitely feel like, especially in your business, just in my own experience, you go out of your way to try to be convenient to people. Like I think there for a while, and I don't know if you probably still do it, but people that were having to travel a while, like to go across the bridge, you're kind of keeping an eye on that and saying, hey, if you want to still come over here, I'll credit that to you. Right. I want you to come over here to build this community, and you seem like a cool person to have around, essentially. And that's the thing that I like especially about the fitness industry is it, and of course we don't have to go into this on yourself, but I myself am an atheist, and a lot of people kind of see community as kind of like a religious activity.
Sure.
And a lot of people, especially in this area, and like I said, don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just not my thing.
Right.
But the thing that I like about fitness is it's not really like a religious activity, but it builds this community.
Right.
And it's powerful. Like you obviously know yourself, there's all of these people that you have in your life. And if you were breeding positivity, it's just acting upon you. Everywhere you go is just more positivity. And yeah, that's admirable. That's definitely admirable.
People from all backgrounds too, it doesn't just if you go with religion, there's usually religions are cliquey, almost. Mm-hmm. And fitness to me, it's everybody and anybody. It's not just the fit people we want. It's everybody of every shape, every size, every color, every race,
Yeah.
We don't see anything like that. It's just, if you're here to better yourself, great. Let's do it. Let's be positive. Let's leave the negativity at the door, mm-hmm. and make changes in your life.
Absolutely. So your gym as you know, is in kind of a small town, and I used to live around there too. But that being said, we're talking about community. So, in your experience, what impact has your business had on the community? And try to share some experiences.
So it's interesting because most of our clients don't come from the community
Oh,
we're in.
okay.
So it's mostly people from the outside coming to our gym. So it's I'm in a small town of Nauvoo, Illinois, which is about 15 minutes from other towns in the area or even further.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mostly people coming from the surrounding area to our gym because of the equipment that we have and the atmosphere that we offer. But I'm very thankful that people are willing to do that. And I think it's what we bring to the table as far as that atmosphere is what attracts the people to us.
Sure.
So
That's cool. So not as much of a close community, just kind of like an extended community.
sure. But we create a community where everybody hopefully knows each other on a first name basis. I do my best to introduce everybody to each other when they come in because I worked at a previous gym where it was kind of people put their headphones in, their head down.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody really knew each other. You wouldn't really interact with the people, even though you might see them every single day. But maybe if you need a spot or something, you can feel comfortable at our fitness center saying, hey, Jason, can you come and give me a spot? Absolutely.
Sure.
And I love that. And I love seeing our members interact with each other that way instead of it being that typical gym where people are just doing their own thing and
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. So it's cool to see the interactions with each other. And I'm very thankful that we've created that atmosphere.
Sure. Yeah, that's cool. So there for a while, I was working on the road, and I actually believe. Probably makes sense to you. You're a fitness guy, but to me, it doesn't make as much sense. You'd think if I was home and in a good routine, I would do more fitness, but it seemed like when I was on the road, I essentially had nothing else to do, so might as well go to the gym, right?
Right.
And I was consistently going, and I was doing rows to start because I was kind of trying to cut down on some body fat, and but I still was doing some some just regular weightlifting, bench press, kind of the main lifts or whatever. But point being or point I'm trying to get to is that to me seemed kind of like a very foreign experience because most of the lifting that I'd done before that was, when I was in the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really lift that much in high school. And then your gym. So
sure.
The Marines, you're already kind of in a close knit. I was in active duty, so we all knew each other. We all either were friends or we're not friends, but
right.
we were all professional because it's the military,
right.
and it has its own feel. But when I went over there, it was just odd. It was just, there was an oddness about it because I didn't know, nor would I even have the time. Of course, I'm on the road, but I didn't know any of the people there. And there was even an interaction, I don't know how I get in these weird interactions, I guess, but there was an interaction in which I was doing cleans. And of course, I had bumper plates and that. And this guy comes over to me and says, I had my headphones on because nobody, like you said, nobody really talks around there. So I'm just going to put my headphones on. He comes over and he's looking kind of mad. And I was like, oh boy, what's going on? And he was like, were you looking at my girlfriend? And I said, no, I was just lifting, dude. I try when I do my lifts, when I'm in those situations, whether it's not necessarily always, I guess, but in certain situations where I feel like there's kind of uncomfortableness or there's a person that I can tell has a certain personality, like you can just tell, like if you pay attention. But I kind of just make sure I'm staring at a point on the wall when I lift. And I just try to keep out of everybody's way, still be polite, and all that. But anyhow, this guy, I was just like, no, I wasn't looking at her. And he's like, well, you got to go lift somewhere else, dude. And I was like,
man,
no, I'm not. I'm not going to do that.
You're
and I just put my headphones on and kept lifting. And he kind of got up in my face a few times, and then they kicked him out.
Wow.
But the point is like, I don't think I would have ever in a million years would have ever thought that would have happened at Motley Fitness, because we're all, community there. And even though I haven't been there in a few years because I moved away, it's like I could still feel that I could go there on a weekday, on a Wednesday or whatever. Yep. And it would just be the same experience in a positive way,
Right.
So that's really cool. I like that.
And we're all about making it a friendly atmosphere, making people feel as comfortable as possible. There's a big stigma with gyms and lifting weights and things like that, and people, I would imagine, guys with their shirts off, sweating and
Yeah.
grunting and just being barbarians basically. And there's some people that lift to that caliber, if you will, but it's a big melting pot of everybody and anybody. So
Sure.
it's people that have never touched a weight before to veterans that have been lifting for years. And that's the thing, is we all start somewhere, and I want people to feel comfortable starting. And
Yeah.
that's the most intimidating factor, is taking that first step into the gym. And I realize that, and I applaud people for taking that step, because it can be very scary. So
Yeah, it can. What do you think of the I can't remember what it's called, but I remember I went to a Planet Fitness or something like that, and there's an
the lump
alarm. Here's an alarm if you make too much noise. Right. What's the deal with that?
So that would be catering towards those people that feel uncomfortable and they aren't experienced. So if there's heavy weights banging on the ground and things like that, it can be startling, and we have that happen at our gym. But I think because we introduce everybody to each other and people get to know each other on a first name basis, they realize, that person's a power lifter and they're training for powerlifting. So they understand why that person is slamming weights and doing those things, versus just hearing those loud noises and being scared and intimidated by it. So it's much more acceptable in our gym versus a Planet Fitness. Their business model is to have as many members as they possibly can, paying their $10 or $20 a month. Hope they never show up. Hope they come for their pizza day or the bagel day or whatever they do. Use the massage chairs that they have and never cancel their memberships. So their business model, they typically have around 6,000 members with between 300 and 500 active members coming 3 or more days a week. So their income is super high, but their wear and tear on the machines is super low.
Sure.
So that's how they function at such a high caliber with their, nice facilities and nice equipment that they have.
Sure.
But that's the opposite of what I want. I want people that have memberships actually come and use their memberships and get the results that they want.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of a weird concept, but it's kind of like being honest.
Yeah. I'm not in it for the business side of things. So they're in it to make money. I'm in it to help people.
Sure.
And I think that's what I've seen traveling the country and all the gyms that I go to, is I can see the people that are in it for a business versus the people that are passionate about what they do. So.
That's cool, because obviously this wasn't like planned beforehand, but that's kind of a theme that I've had in the podcast, is I've talked with a few artists, specifically, musicians and, poet and writer or whatever. And you hit the nail on the head. Like, I feel that more people need to just do things for the sake of wanting to do that thing, and not do things for the sake of doing it for profit.
Right.
So like, if you are just like, hey, I want to be a musician, and you're saying, and the only reason I'm going to be a musician is because I want to get those big bucks, you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Absolutely.
And hey, that doesn't mean that Beyonce shouldn't get paid a lot of money. She's super talented and should get a lot of money. It's not always my cup of tea for music, but she can always hit the notes. She can dance really well. All these things that are a talent. And that's why she gets paid a lot. But I would be willing to guess that she probably isn't just doing it necessarily for, or what her initial motivation at least was not just to do it for money. Maybe these days she's like in a corporate thing that could probably be discussed, but getting back to topic, I just wanted to say I like that, because if we have more people in the world that just do things for the sake of doing things and not worrying so much about, am I going to profit off of this? It would just make things so much better. We would have so many fewer grifters in the world. Like, there's just these people that they're not really bringing anything good to society necessarily. They're just using others to make it further in society.
Just a cog in a machine, man.
Yeah. And I just don't like that. I don't like that. So, switching gears here a little bit. In general, how does fitness make you successful in life? And real quick here, in other words, what are some ways that fitness can positively affect you beyond lifting heavier weights or running faster?
So I think that goes back to your mood, an uplifting mood. It's going to make you a more productive person, going to make you more confident. I think just overall, there's so much more than than just the physical side of things, like I mentioned earlier. But it's going to be your, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm drawing a blank.
I guess I think
the
of
mental health side of things, I guess, if you will. I think it plays a bigger role in mental health than almost physical is what I see a lot of. So starting somebody off and then seeing them a month later, the changes that they make in that time mentally is pretty awesome. And
Sure.
I think that that's more of a positive change than the physical sides. Obviously, the physical is going to come with it, the more consistent that you are with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the mental changes that people go through and the more positive that I see in their life and the more productive tendencies that they have after they get started with it is a huge change for them.
Sure. One thing I'll ask, and of course, the disclaimer, neither one of us are neuroscientists or anything. One thing I've kind of thought on that general subject is, does the positive effect come from, and I think it comes from both places, but just hear me out here. So does it come from an actual physiological change in your body as much, or is it building positive habits?
I would say both, definitely. You have the endorphins and dopamine spikes, in your chemical makeup whenever you exercise. So you have the natural antidepressants that you're getting from the exercise, and then obviously the physical as well. So definitely both.
Sure. It's kind of interesting because, like, I've always thought of lots of things to be really just a spectrum. So, like, for example, with me, I've been extremely overweight for my body type before. I've been like, I think 280 some pounds before, and I'm 6'4", like that's overweight for me. And I've also been, and of course weight doesn't matter as much, but I was obese, like
Sure.
just not healthy. I wasn't eating healthy. I was on the road all the time.
Your body composition.
Yeah, it wasn't good. And I guess the explanation is, on the other end of the spectrum, I've also participated in a powerlifting meet over at your guys' place, and won for the males or whatever, which Maury still beat me. But anyhow, I think of that being a spectrum. So I know if I do absolutely nothing, that just ain't good. Like, probably not going to live too long. And I'm not saying that I know that definitively. I'm just saying, seems like it makes sense. Like, sure, I might, run 10 miles a day and then end up keeling over on a run with a heart attack. But I would think that my chances are a little bit higher that's not going to happen if I just try to stay in shape.
Correct.
So, but on the other hand, do I really need to be like Mr. Universe? Like, it takes a lot of effort, and I applaud you and Maury for like taking on that lifestyle, because I know preparing meals, like, it is a huge hassle for me. Like, I have ADD, so trying to keep, and I mean, I work with it. I work as a professional, so I have methods, and maybe I should revisit that specific part of my life and apply some of my professional methods I've learned over the past couple years. But point being is like, there's, so much planning and so many different standards that you must follow to be able to keep this physique, because it's important to you, right?
Right. Absolutely. It's a daily thing. It's almost 95% of my meals that have to be clean, if you will. And
sure.
I do definitely indulge in things that I want. I have candy and cake and whatever I want, whenever I want. It's just not often. I have a lot of self-control with that. Literally every single time I go to the grocery store, I walk by the chips and I really want to get them, but I never do. Occasionally I will. Like, the last time I got chips was probably 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But every single time I go to the store, literally, I'm like, man, if those chips, I really want those chips. But I just don't do it because it doesn't give me the results that I want. But I was just talking with a client yesterday, and a lot of my clients, they don't eat the way that you need to in order to get the results that they would want for the physical changes, but they're still exercising. So they're getting positive changes, with that, but they're just not necessarily seeing the physique, if you will, but they're still exercising. They're still keeping the body in motion. And I think that's the most important thing with our society. In the past, I'd say 30 to 50 years, we have definitely slowed down a lot as a society, and we're not working nearly as hard as what we had to work. How would you say that?
Yeah. Work previously. Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? So we just have a lot more of a sedentary lifestyle these days. And unfortunately, our medical system is more amped towards let's give you a pill to fix this instead of let's change what you're eating and let's maybe be a little more active. And I think that trying to get that through to people is what I'm trying to do most with my clients is,
Sure.
let's try to eat right, let's try to exercise healthy. And I'm seeing many people get off of pills and get off of high blood pressure medicines and get off of their cholesterol medicines.
Hmm.
And to me, that's a huge win. And I love seeing
Absolutely.
that. But I just wish more people would get on board with it.
Hmm.
It's surprising to me how many people don't exercise and don't take care of themselves. But that goes back to the knowledge. We're all lacking the knowledge of how to exercise. We're not born with knowing how to do it.
Hmm.
And it's not very important. Like you said, going to Nauvoo, it wasn't like we had a class or anything. If you wanted to lift, there was a tiny little weight room about the size of this room, and
Yep.
they didn't show you how to use it. And I was one of the very few that actually went in there and used it when I was going to school. I can
Hmm.
remember with Mr. Pinkston and Miss J, I'd go out and ask them, "Hey, can I go lift weights today instead of playing dodgeball or volleyball or whatever it was that day?" And
Hmm.
most of the time they'd say it's okay, but I was typically the only one in there, and it wasn't very popular.
Sure.
So is what it is. But our society, I think every 8-year-old should be given a training barbell that's 10 pounds and we learn how to use it for the basic
Yeah.
motions and
Hmm.
movements. But it's just not the way that our society is. And it's almost like they're like kids shouldn't exercise. They think it's bad for kids, and that's not true.
Yeah.
There's no science to back that. It's just a bunch of hearsay.
I've heard quite a few things, which I don't really take a lot of. I take them with a grain of salt, but I have heard a number of times the argument of, well, their skeletal structure or something like that is
Right.
not developed. So if you get all these muscles, there's going to be a negative effect of some sort.
Or stunting your growth.
Yeah, or something like that. It's like, huh.
There's
if we're
limitations. There's definitely, you shouldn't have an 8-year-old squatting and doing heavy compound movements,
sure,
but they can definitely do activities like body weight movements.
that would be absurd.
8 to 11, there's certain things that they should be doing. 11 to 13, there's certain things, and then 14 and beyond. So there are limitations, but they should still be active.
I don't think my son would even have the coordination to
Right.
like squat. Period.
Right.
Like he would just fall over.
How
like,
is he?
He's 8 now.
Right. So for his age, it would be mostly body weight movements and
Yeah.
sports. you
Yeah.
know? And then once he gets to about 11, then you can start introducing some of those lifts. And then once he gets to 14 and above, pretty much anything. So,
Mhm.
but it's knowing how to approach that and knowing which movements they should be doing at those ages and starting them off right. So I'm
Sure.
extremely excited for my daughters because they will get that from a young age and get to grow up with that for their sports and things if they want to do that. And they'll have a little bit of a leg up from everybody else.
Heck yeah.
So,
Heck yeah. And all those benefits, it's not just physical. So
Right.
it's,
And we I think as humans we know the list of benefits if we were to exercise. The list is huge. And if we don't exercise, the negative list is also large, but we choose to be on this lazier side of things. And I tell everybody that we're all naturally lazy, me and myself
yeah.
included.
Mhm.
And it takes effort in order to get onto this side of the spectrum instead of the other. And it's much easier just to sit on the couch or lay in bed versus going and actually physically doing something. But it
Mhm.
takes that drive to get up and move yourself.
sure.
And maybe having someone like myself help you, nudge you along a little bit and try to motivate and try to help educate
Mhm.
and get people to the point where they can come in and feel comfortable and confident
Yep.
and make it a habit and a routine and change people's lives.
I mean, one way you changed my life is you did a lot of work in helping me to do like the clean and press, like
Right.
especially in, some of those Olympic movements. That's my favorite movements to do, lifting, period.
Awesome.
I love doing those. The COVID and all that has kept me out of there, but I do calisthenics. I'll do some push-ups, and when it's not icy, I'll run around the block or something. But
Right.
I feel like my fitness world has been kind of stolen because I purposely have not bought equipment and stuff, and I personally don't really like calisthenics. Like
Mhm.
that's why when I was in the military, specifically, I think it's good to go to the gym and go, pump some iron and stuff like that, but maybe, get on treadmill, run a bike or whatever. But the point being is just certain ways that they would have me, and I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but it almost seems like they just kind of threw this thing together and didn't have like actual ideas as to like how fitness works.
Sure.
Like they just like for example, I know a number of Marines that have all gotten shin splints because of just this. I'm messing up my shins,
Right.
like you're just doing it over and over again. And of course, these old gunnies that think that that's the old school Marine Corps and that,
Right.
and I'm sure that's the the same in was the Air Force, right?
Yep.
So it's probably a similar thing there.
So it's cool. I got to kind of so I was in from 2010 2016, and during that time they actually revamped like the PT tests and things. So when I first got in, there was the push up, push up, pull up, sit up, and run, which is pretty standard across all branches. But now there's 10 different events that they have to do. I think that's more for the special warfare guys and not across the board for everybody that's in the Air Force. But I am very thankful now that they're doing like an actual PT test that's going to relate and correlate with our career field,
Right.
and not just doing, how many sit-ups can you do in a minute, how many push-ups can you do in a minute. So
just arbitrary motions for the sake of saying you're doing physical activity.
Right. So now there's a deadlift, there's tossing a medicine ball.
Really? They do a deadlift? That's cool.
Yeah. So and then, like I said, there's 10 different events, like cone sprints, and so all sorts of different things. You have to pass all 10 events. If you fail one, you fail the entire test. So I think that their standards are definitely going up, and I think it's the right direction. Cool. But like you said, like with the endless rucking and things like that, it's just terrible for your knees and your shins and your feet. And I had multiple guys during training that had, bones break because of it. And it's pretty ridiculous. But at the same time, I understand it because with that, they're trying to weed out the weak and trying to get the mentally strong guys. And I think it's more of a mental game than a physical. It's both. But I think it's trying to get the mentally weak guys weeded out. So, but it's one way to do it.
They got to do it.
Not necessarily the right way to do it, but.
So I know we just went to military, but before we go to military, we got two more questions here. So, real quick. So, disclaimer: consult your doctor before engaging in strenuous activity. But is there anybody that you can think of beyond someone that is, and probably not even that case, but just like if you have some sort of a disability to not be able to work out or lift weights, and I can't imagine what that would be, probably that would be a person to not do it. But is there anybody else beyond that extenuating circumstance that should not do fitness?
I don't think there's anybody that should not do it. Absolutely not. I think we all should do what we're capable of doing. Some people might have limitations, absolutely, but I think we're all capable of doing something, and something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
So
what is your oldest client? How old are they?
Right now, 80. I have an 83-year-old that shocked me. He came in and wanted to tour and saw one of my new pull-up machines that you put your knees on a pad and it helps you. It's an assisted pull-up machine. So you put your knee on the pad and it takes weight off of your body weight so you can do pull-ups. And he tried it out and then he was like, "Can I try it without the pad?" And I was just like, "What? You're 83, man. Like, what?" And I was like, "Are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah, I want to give it a try." And I did the machine so the pad was down and he jumped up there and he did 2 pull-ups, body weight pull-ups. Yes. And I was just completely shocked.
Wow.
And to this day, every time I see him in there, he's in there at least 5 days a week with his wife. And I'm like, that's a goal of mine.
Good for him.
I want to be that age and be that active because that's the only time I've ever seen it. It's not like you see 83-year-old guys all the time doing pull-ups and working out on a daily basis. So it's very motivational for me to see somebody like that. And it's cool. And he shoots basketball, every single day too, and is out there dribbling around and shooting jump shots. And
nice.
It's just awesome to see a guy like that.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, and we have another individual. He's 88, so I think that's the oldest client that we've had so far.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, last one on the fitness. What is your opinion of like the body positivity movement?
So elaborate what the body positivity movement is.
So, and I might be getting this slightly wrong because I didn't look up a definition, but I would say that what I would imagine if I heard body positivity movement is, hey, everybody has all different shapes and sizes of bodies and we should be positive about that. Like, for example, so anyway, I have a more of a lankier style, body, whereas other people are kind of more broad chested. We're talking about guys here. And then of course there's, On the women's side, there's like the really smaller girls versus there's like Amazonian, large women that play WNBA and stuff,
Right.
That's what I would think. But I've started to see kind of over the internets this kind of shifting of what the body positivity movement is. And what I'm specifically talking about is I believe that there's a few influencers out there that are extremely obese. Like, there's no question in anybody's mind that they're obese, and they are proud of that, and then say that you should just do that if you feel like that is what you want to do.
I mean,
And
everybody has their own right to do what they want with their life.
yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
I don't go out of my way to ever judge anybody, no matter what they look like or
Sure.
where they come from or anything like that. So if that's what they want to be or do, go for it. But if somebody wants to be healthy, I'm here to give you those tools to help you get to that point. But I would never go out of my way to judge anybody or shame anybody or anything like that.
Yeah.
But everybody from all shapes and sizes come into our gym, and we don't ever judge anybody or look down on them or say things behind their back or anything like that. Like I said, we're
Yeah,
all
you
about
can't do that.
positivity and just trying to uplift people and get them to a better place. So that's what we take pride in, and making people feel comfortable when they come in.
Sure. And I think the only like concern just for me specifically is just sure, everybody has the right to do whatever they want. I just would be concerned that if it gets spread out that just continually being obese is kind of just a good thing even. I'm just saying healthy wise, I would say that's not good.
Well, bottom
Like
line, they're going to have a shorter lifespan.
well, that's what I'm saying is it's not trying to just be like, ha fatty or something like that. That's not what I'm doing. Absolutely not.
Right.
It's those people like the influencer I'm thinking about. I can't remember her name, but I picturing her in my head or whatever. She is going to have maybe kids someday, and then those kids could
They're going to be
probably going to keep being a product of their environment.
Right.
And I'm just saying that they don't have a choice. So like that's something that people that are like, hey, if you want to be overweight and not do literally anything about it, go keep on with your life.
So it could also
But I do think that kids should be taught the correct things though, and I think there's an inhibiting factor if you're just like, fat and proud of it, essentially.
A child endangerment issue.
Yeah.
Almost.
I mean, I don't know that it's that extreme, but I see what you're saying. It is in a way, because in the long run, even so, if we think about it, and this is kind of some dystopian stuff. So hopefully we don't go too far off the deep end here, but if a lot of people's fear about socialized healthcare essentially is, have you ever heard of the movie Gattaca?
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, if people are able to check your DNA and know that, okay, he's probably going to die around the age of 55 from a heart attack. People are worried about this, but yet that's kind of the wrong way of looking at it. It's like, well, aren't you essentially doing that thing to yourself by almost guaranteeing? It's not a guarantee, but it's
definitely increasing.
Yeah, it's a lot higher chance that you're going to get something, whether it be a heart attack or cancer or all these things by living an unhealthy lifestyle.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's my biggest concern. It's not just to shame people for being fat or anything like that, but we also have to have some semblance of sanity within our society and just say, hey, you do you, but when your kid comes to school, we ain't going to be teaching them that stuff.
Right.
It needs to stay in your house because this is not the way the science agrees, essentially.
I agree.
All right. Well, that was fun talking about fitness. You ready to sign up for the military?
Here we go.
So, did you learn any skills in the military that have translated well to owning both a gym and a brand?
I would say the biggest thing I learned was the mental barriers that I pushed past in my training that showed me what my body's truly capable of doing is far beyond what I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people that have that quitter mentality and they don't push themselves. They might think they're pushing themselves a little bit, but you're not even close to pushing yourself.
Yeah.
So that's why I try to unlock that into people's mind, if you will, and push people past their comfort zone.
Sure.
So it's difficult to get to that point, but once you've done things that you didn't think that you could do even more beyond that. So
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. Yeah, I learned, I would say, kind of like the same things. Of course, I don't own a gym or whatever, but just good skills that I learned in the military kind of translates to that, like you said, kind of like having those, pushing past those mental barriers. You know, when you do a PFT, physical fitness test, you want to get as high a score as you can because, you know, that works into your promotion in the Marines anyway. I think all of the services have some form of that or whatever. Right. And like prior to that, I had some experience because, of course, I played basketball or whatever. But without those experiences, like a lot of people pretty much just keel over and think, oh man, I'm done. And it's like, no, you're not really done. You're just not actually putting all into it.
You've just never experienced this level of discomfort before.
Sure. And that's kind of an interesting thing is like the best bodybuilders are probably the best at managing pain. Mm-hmm. Some of the best people in the world to manage pain. I wonder if like a Buddhist monk became a bodybuilder, they'd just be like, they'd be able to do anything. Right. Oh, they go the other way though. They're very dexterous and, you know, like the Kung Fu monks and all that. It's insane the things that they're able to do with their bodies. And it's like you're on a completely different wavelength, but still fit, but you're not that type of fit, right? Like there's all these different ways of fit. Yeah. There's all these different types of fit. Yeah. It's really cool. So in your opinion, what are the best reasons for joining the military?
Interesting question. My perception of the world we live in is much different now compared to when I was younger and enlisted. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because they put, you know, men and women in uniform in our schools and try to say this is the proud, you know, especially like the Marines like you were in, they try to hype it up, if you will, you know, to make them think that this is what's the word?
The top dogs.
Well, yeah,
essentially,
you know, I don't just know. The hype that they give them is it's great that you serve your country. It's great to be a part of that, but at the same time, there's anybody can do it if you put your mind to it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that the wars that we fought and fighting currently are not necessarily for the right reasons.
Sure.
And I don't think that people are educated enough at 17 years old to really put their name on the line, put their life on the line at that age. I think we should honestly raise the age to join to 21 so you can make a more informed decision at that point. I've had many conversations with people about this, that if you want to join at 17, then go through ROTC until you're 21. Once you turn 21, then decide whether you want to join the actual military or not. Mm-hmm. And people kind of raise an eyebrow at that, and some people agree with that, but I think that would be a much better military, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
I joined when I was 20. I tried to join when I was 17, but they medically did not allow it because of my epilepsy background. And I had to get a waiver when I was 20 in order to join. But at 17, I wanted to be a load master, which was just loading C-130s, and which is an aircraft. But then whenever I turned 20, I wanted to make a bigger difference in the world. So I wanted to do something that would, in my opinion or thoughts at those times, would make a bigger difference, which would have been calling in airstrikes and putting bombs on target and actually taking out people that I thought were bad people in this world, which there definitely are bad people in this world that should not be doing the things that they're doing. But at the same time, I don't know, man. It's crazy because their thoughts and their religions and their beliefs, just because they're different than ours, does it make it right or wrong? You know what I mean?
No. I mean, well, yeah, that's a can of worms.
The extremists, yes, absolutely, that are putting innocent people in harm's way.
But the majority, no.
Right.
Probably
you know what I mean? But the perception that we have labeled those people as isn't necessarily true. I don't know if you've seen any of like the Vice News people that actually go over to Afghanistan and Iraq and meet the people, and they're super chill people, just like you and me.
I served in Iraq. So I met them.
You've met the locals and interacted with them, and I'm sure you've met good people, you've met bad people at the same time. So and they're everywhere in the world. Doesn't matter where you are. But it's just the labels that we try to create. But in my opinion, I think the wars are mostly for money and for oil and for the poppy fields and drugs, and there's a lot more that goes into it than what the general public, I think, thinks,
Sure.
But
yeah, I can't say that I'm overly impressed with just how and that actually goes into the next question. So do you think that our military is used effectively? We already touched on that, but I don't really I agree with you. I don't think that we're used effectively. I don't quite understand what the crusade was, over there, and to say that it was weapons of mass destruction seemed like it was kind of just a lie to essentially just manage the oil tycoons, essentially, or, I do think, though, and I'll say this, I do think that it was a positive thing to get rid of Saddam Hussein. That guy was obviously bad, and his children were bad, and
what he was doing to his people.
Right, and I think that there is some positive change that we did do for that area that came out of it. But at the same time, the question could definitely be had. It's like, is that our responsibility to do that? Is that, and once again, kids that are getting recruited into the military are thinking that they're going off to save the world and, make the world a better place. And I'm not so entirely sure that the United States by itself needed to do that. I just think that, we have all of these other organizations that would be just much better at doing that, better equipped, because when we're a country by ourselves, right, then what we do in all these other countries plays back at us. I mean, we already saw that with Afghanistan and, with the Russians and that. We caused our own problem.
Right.
And we then went over there because of that problem we essentially caused, and then tried to said, well, we're making it better or something like that. And it's like, well, maybe a different organization like NATO and maybe that's completely absurd, but there needs to be an organization that's like, they go do that type of thing. It's a bunch of countries all together that do it, because then we don't build necessarily this stigma that puts a target on our back. We don't have to worry as much, because it's like, we don't have, guys off in the desert, getting upset about the infidel, and coming into their country and telling them what to do.
Right.
And their ideology, I mean, I've read the Quran once, not that impressed, but the point being is the whole ideology kind of is just a strict clash with modern society. Like, you just can't, and I really don't, and a lot of religions have kind of changed so that they don't clash, that one they just haven't. They're like, no, we're not going to, unless you're kind of this larger group that are these, kind of more moderate Muslims. And, Sam Harris talks about those quite a bit on his podcast. He's a philosopher that I like a lot. And that's kind of what you're talking about. Those people aren't really a problem. But once again, when you look at the actual teachings themselves, I can say definitively, just as I can say definitively about the Bible, and I can say definitively about certain aspects of the Mahabharata, which is from, the Hindu religion, I can say the same thing about the Quran and then other texts that surround that it's not moral. It's not the most moral thing that we could be doing.
I think this will be a whole different subject, and a very controversial subject, but I think that we need to get away from religions and just become, one as the world, if you will, and get away from all these countries and different, there's 6,000 religions? Is that what it is? Or 3,000?
There's 2, way more than that. There's 6,000 plus variations of Christianity alone.
So it'll take
insane,
probably thousands of years
I don't think so.
To,
So today, right now, there's a statistic of nuns, not as in the nuns that wear the hats or whatever, but NONES, where they say that they're essentially nothing. They're not saying definitely a God doesn't exist or definitely this or that. They're just saying, I don't really believe in that stuff, dude. You know,
Sure.
I just continue. That's reaching over 20% now.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And in fact, I want to say that, and look this up on me, it was a high number. It was past 70+% of the millennial and then earlier generation.
So is that worldwide or just in the United States?
That was just United States. I don't know about worldwide, probably more than that, because you figure a lot of European countries are secular. Like granted, well, they're not in the European Union anymore, but Britain, they have like their Church of England or something like that. So like, I wouldn't say that they're strictly secular, but I have talked with a few people from that area, and they say that like nobody really, like they hardly ever meet a person that's like super religious ever, like hardly ever. And in here, I mean, my whole entire family structure, for one, I mean, in my case, is very religious. Get on them, do whatever is good for you. I just don't think, at the same token, that there's really a lot of evidence for that, for one. And I have read the books, and I have read epistemology. How those books came to be is the study of epistemology. And I have done studies with that from, scholars like Richard Carrier, for example. Dr. Richard Carrier did this whole entire beautiful work. It's super dry, and I'm not going to bore you with it too long, but point that I'm trying to get at is on the historicity of Jesus, whether a real person named Jesus Christ, of Nazareth actually existed and walked this earth. And he, of course, as in all these questions, and a lot of people get this confused, we're not saying, nope. It's not. It's never a nope. It's a very methodical way of trying to find out what is likely to be true, and it's called Bayes' theorem. And you essentially have math. And I'm not going to bore with the annoying stuff, and nor am I a Bayes' theorem expert or anything like that. But he has a whole book called Proving History, where he explains the Bayes' theorem and applies that to various other things. And then he wrote another book on the historicity of Jesus Christ. And by the time he came to the end of this, I had it on audiobook, and I want to actually just buy it because it was really hard to get through an audiobook. It took me in upwards of a year and a half to like listen to it, because it's like 26 hours.
Sure.
And it's really in-depth knowledge and history about like Jewish culture, Roman culture, lots of things that involve the Jesus story. And by the end, I know you're on the edge of your seat here, and I'm not, go check it out on Amazon Books. It's like I said, on the historicity of Jesus, Bayes' theorem says not very likely, probably didn't exist. Does that mean he definitely didn't? No, it doesn't. But that's way better than way different from what people who are religious and have a vested interest in this person actually being alive. Like Christianity almost is kind of like mythology at that point. Like you're essentially to the point now where we have this study that's peer reviewed, by the way, in a reputable journal. It's not like just some sham journal or anything like that. I can't remember which one it is, but I mean, it's a serious peer reviewed document, historical document by a doctor who majored in religious studies and also Roman history. Went over and came up and with this thing and said, it's not likely a Jesus existed. And then I said, looks like that's mythology now,
Sure.
And that's where I'm kind of saying is like, sure, there are positive things in religions. You can find positive things in Harry Potter, even. You can find positive things in all kinds of things. But do I need to use Harry Potter as a book for my life? No, absolutely not. And same thing, like even if I had a self-help book, name one, I don't really read them, but same concept. If there was a really good, super popular self-help book, maybe it might be good, maybe not. But I think that the primary motivation should be like outside of that. Everybody should be taught when they, are in their family structure, and then even in the schools and even further beyond that and further education in your jobs and all that should be taught to try to reduce human suffering. The very worst moral situation that I can possibly think of is literally everybody is in the worst agony they could possibly imagine. Everybody on the whole planet would be in the worst agony. Can't stop it. Nobody can do anything. We're just existing in agony. That's the worst, most immoral hellscape that I can imagine.
Right.
And then on the other, side, we kind of don't know. I think that our society that we live in, while there's all kinds of problems we want to fix, is pretty moral. I mean, it's got a lot of things that we want to improve, but would I say that it's a moral peak? No. And the reason I can say that is because I can observe that society and I can say, okay, there's homeless people on the street. That is human suffering. Why do we got that? Our society doesn't prioritize that,
Right.
apparently, enough, because there are people.
Which obviously we have the resources to
Sure.
give those people houses and homes and things like that, but then that goes into the mental health side of things and
Sure.
whole another ball of wax there.
Sure.
But I think that from the religion standpoint, I think we've had this talk a few years ago about just our natural human nature and like rivalries for some reason. People of different skin color, people of different races, people of different religions, even go down to the high school level. Like when we were going to Nauvoo, we didn't like the Carthage Blue Boys. Why? Nobody knew why. But if you're from Carthage, it's just like there's friction, for some reason. And I have many friends from Carthage that I love, literally love. But when you're in high school, for some reason, why is there that issue?
Sure.
And that goes worldwide though. People from different countries, people from different religions, people from different backgrounds. It's why do we have that in our DNA to not like people that are different? Which we should all, like I was saying earlier, just be one and just consider everybody our brother and sister and want the best for each individual out there and not want to do harm to anybody. But
Sure.
like I said earlier, I think it'll take many, 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 many years to get to that point.
It will.
If it would ever happen.
Sure. And that's just, there's this, and I wanted to say this earlier, I'm going to bring it up now. So there's a recent kind of conversation that I saw on the, or read or listened to on the Sam Harris podcast or whatever. And I thought was really something that should be brought up here is you should be the ancestor of your future happier self. Should be the ancestor of your future happier self. And I think that you can take that even further than what they were talking about. We should be the ancestors of a future better society.
Right.
And I don't think that that's controversial. A lot of people have thought that, certainly. But the point being is that a lot of people seem to think that just keeping the lights on and, making sure that the roads don't mess up and keeping, the houses powered up and there's people out there that they just have really no interest in progressing whatsoever.
Sure.
They just really want to this has been easy enough and seems good enough for me. Let's just leave it how it is. And there's all these other people, like the ones we just mentioned that are, starving and homeless. They don't seem to like that. And I don't think that they should have to just grit their teeth and pull themselves up by their bootstraps, as we keep getting told over and over again.
Right.
It's not a moral society. I am just really not a fan of it. A couple more fast ones here on the military, and then we'll move to a different subject, which we've been kind of jumping around here anyway. So what would your feelings be if any of your daughters decide to serve in the military? And go ahead and answer. I have to plug in this camera real quick, but go ahead and answer.
Okay. I would be for it. The structure that I got from it, I think, was very positive. I think that I think that you grow from it in a positive way. It gives you morals and teaches you things that you wouldn't get outside of the military because it's just a completely different structure. Every single day is structured, and a lot of kids these days don't have that. Unfortunately, a lot of broken homes and things like that. And I think that it's a good place for people to get those skills, those life skills.
So I'm kind of surprised that you were not a little bit more hesitant about that, I guess.
With the girls joining the military,
Mm-hmm.
I just see the benefits. Obviously, there's a lot of school benefits and traveling benefits and seeing the world, meeting people. There's a lot of life skills that you gain from joining the military.
Mm-hmm.
And I see positivities in that aspect from it. So,
okay.
But what's your opinion on that?
I don't think I would want my son to join the military specifically because of just the poor planning. Like, I feel like the motivations for somebody to go serve their country should be for good reasons. And if you're abusing that cool system, or that system I agree with, I think that public service is good. It's something that people should want to do and should do. But if that whole system of, serving the public is misused, then I think that it's kind of ruins that system and makes it to where I don't want my son to be a part of that. But I do see what you're saying. I mean, do I think he'd probably come out all right? Sure. And he'd probably learn a lot of the same things that I did. I can give him that, or give it that. But I just think there are, having already that knowledge, myself as, his father, I can teach him a lot of those things without him having to really necessarily learn that in the military, which if he goes, I ain't going to cry over a beer or anything about it. But I would be kind of in the case of, okay, hopefully we don't have some absurd conflict that, doesn't really benefit the American people, but, we sacrifice our kids' lives essentially for it.
Literally.
Yeah. Last one of the military one. And we already kind of touched on it, but I didn't get this question specifically answered. Was the war in Iraq worth it, in your opinion?
Man, so I don't think to the extent that it's been drawn out to. I think that the attack on 9/11, obviously we should have retaliated and done something about it. I think once we killed bin Laden and Saddam Hussein, I think that we should have pulled out at that point, which would have been, I believe, in 2011-ish.
Yeah.
And we're still over there today, 10 years after that.
Sure.
So it's been drawn out way too long. I think there's been way too many tax dollars spent over there, billions and probably trillions of dollars at this point. And we both know how much reckless spending happens in the military.
It's ridiculous.
Wasteful spending happens in the military. It's crazy. If you still have money left over at the end of the year, they just spend it on anything, just so they have that same budget the following year, if not more. So I personally experienced very ridiculous spending in just my small unit that I was a part of. I couldn't imagine battalions and larger units what they waste their money on. So
I mean, my primary job, I was electrical equipment repair specialist. It was MOS 1142, and I saw quite a bit of, because you figure anytime we work on something, you have to get parts. It's similar to my current profession, except now I'm kind of on the engineering side. I am on the engineering side, but point being is if something breaks, you have to get parts. Well, I remember, and I'm not going to say the model numbers or whatever, but in this generator, I primarily worked on generators and power distribution equipment. And in this generator, there's a control board that regulates essentially the voltage in the generator. Pretty dang important, right? This thing was 1980s technology. It was literally huge, this circuit board with these huge capacitors and just massive suckers. I mean, it came straight out of a 1980s Frankenstein movie or something like that. Just absurd. But anyhow, $1,200 for each of those parts. And all it is some silicone and some solid state devices, essentially, that are pennies, less than pennies. soldered in there. Now, granted, the design, I get that, but the military owns that design. So why is it that $1,200? Like what? And we're not even talking about like it's $1,200 in Iraq. So like they have to pay these extravagant costs to transport it or something. Like, no, Cherry Point, North Carolina, pull on the old system up. How much is this? $1,200. Why?
Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense.
It's just like the insurance for the medical side of things, like
Yeah.
how much a procedure costs when in reality it costs this much to actually do it, but they charge you $50,000. It's the same with the military. With anything that you get there, it's going to upcharge times 10. You know, the government contractors, they take well advantage of the military and charge them a ridiculous amount of money that nobody in the civilian world would ever pay.
Yeah.
But the military pays it, so they keep charging it, you know.
And but the thing that pisses me mostly off about that is that's just, I understand the motivations to try to keep a budget, up, try to have a constant budget each year, because each year might be, different. And maybe that's a weakness in the system, is like it should either be made this way, or if it's already this way, I guess explain, hold on a second here. We should, it should at least, if it's already this way, it should explain that, hey, you're not going to not get budget if you need budget, essentially, is what I'm getting at. Is like, if the system already is the case where if you don't do this, we're lowering your budget and you're never getting it back, got to change it. If it's not that way, explain to everybody, hey, we don't freaking need to do this. Just don't spend the money if you don't need it. And if there's a contract that you have that is just literally wasting taxpayer dollars, okay, I guess we ain't working with that company anymore. Hey, the U.S. military is looking for somebody. Anybody want to make this? I bet we'd have 50,000 companies just pop up. Oh yeah, we'll do it. We got 3D printers. We got this. Like, why are we using these? And I get it. It's a huge animal. I mean, it's not just like, it's to the level of like Amazon style logistics. It's huge and hard to get your mind around. But the point being is we really need to try to make it so the system isn't just arbitrarily wasting our tax dollars. Like that doesn't make us, it just doesn't make any sense. But yet we'll have people bitch year in and year out about giving people welfare, for example, as if that's like something we should give two flying craps about. We should give people welfare. And you know what? I could literally care less. And that this is a trope, and I don't hold this idea, but all the people that say the welfare moms situation, that stuff needs to stop. That needs to really stop. Like when I hear people say that, I'm like, stop. You need to really stop. Like, it doesn't breed a good culture. Once again, that's just making another negative out of a negative. Do you think they want to be on welfare? They're just all like, oh man, I really hope I just get on this welfare. No, they aren't. They're in a bad situation. And even if they're the case of, oh, well, I just don't feel that I can do anything in society. I mean, I still, in some cases, I just feel like it is less moral to not give them that support, because you can't just think about that one person, right? You can't just think of the, and I don't really like the term, but since we've already said it, like the welfare mom mentality, like, okay, you can say whatever you want. It might be ignorant as hell, like, oh, they're lazy, or they're this, or they're that, or they have, they're out going and buying drugs, or whatever the case is. I've heard it all. But the point being is like, okay, even if that's true, what do we say about those kids that she has? They're going to eventually go out into society, and they're eventually going to be making more of the problem. So why would we not try to lift these people up when we can? And the argument is just like, oh, well, that's a big deal, this and that. And it's like, well, I'm sorry. We have a lot of money. We just mismanage the crap out of it. And I'm not going to entertain those ideas anymore of, oh, it's a hard problem. Okay. I mean, the Hoover Dam was a hard problem, but it's still sitting there. I mean, going to the moon was a hard problem, but we went there, and no, the moon landing wasn't faked. But the point being is like it blows my mind. Like I was talking to my wife about this, and I was just saying, when is it that like conservatism in general? We're not talking about like United States conservatism. We're talking about in general throughout history. So like a very conservative um, I mean, it is kind of an ideology, but it's also a social system that was used for thousands of years in China. It's called Confucianism. And it's very, very strict. They have like almost kind of like little procedures for everything. And the people stick by the book and, are very ritualistic. They always, Confucius himself always talked about sticking with the rituals in this because he thought that they were very valuable or whatever. And on the other side of things, we have actual progress. Like, yeah, I get that conservatism can work in like a time of war or like a time of hardship or whatever, but we ain't in a hardship right now, really. I mean, yeah, we had a pandemic, but it was way, way worse. It was way, way worse when we had, I don't know, like the previous, I guess, pneumonia pandemic in 2000, or excuse me, not 2000, 1912 or something like that, the big influenza pandemic. But
It's like 1918.
yeah, something like that. But the point being is like that was some horrific stuff. I mean, a lot of people died. I mean, there's mass graves to prove it. We didn't, I mean, we experienced some of that, and yes, I do think that the pandemic happened, but I do think that our government completely screwed it up. Like they dropped the ball, and it's not even a like a jab towards the GOP or whatever. It's just I don't care what party you're in. The situation we're in right now, that was because of you guys. Like it doesn't matter if it's the Democrats. I think they honestly suck. They are awful. Like Joe Biden recently raised the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. That's not going to enact like a lasting change in our society. The best times we have had economically in the past 100 years was the years following the wars. And do you know what the tax rate was? 75 and 85% for corporate tax rate. And do you know what that causes people to do, or corporations? They don't want to pay that tax and give it to Uncle Sam, so they invest in their employees. They give them better benefit packages. And they give them all of these good things, like, I don't know, allowing you to live off of one income.
Mm-hmm.
That's a dream. That's a pipe dream these days in a lot of people's cases. Why do we not have politicians that are enacting lasting change when we have evidence 50 years ago, 60 years ago of it prospering? It's because of this corruption and people just not like the people that are in the political sphere. They're there for like an obvious specific reason, obviously like a power grab. Some of them probably do go in for a good reason, and I think maybe a lot of them. But the point is even still, the way the system is, I've said a number of times, the sophists have won. Sophists are essentially people that just manipulate words so that they're right, essentially. Like that's a sophist. And there's a ton of sophists, in my opinion, in the legal system. Right. Lawyers, many times, are just sophists. They're super intelligent individuals, but are they really benefiting society? Are they delivering justice necessarily? No, I don't think so. And it goes all the way up to the political sphere, the people that are the legal guys, a lot of them lawyers, right? Almost all, quite a few, I won't say almost all, but so many politicians are lawyers. And it's because they can just whip up these, porked up, insane legislation that has like 60,000 different tasks within one document. And no normal person is going to read that. Right. So they can just essentially put anything in there without anybody ever having any oversight in it.
There's a 600-page document.
Yeah. Hey, we're voting on this tomorrow.
Right. That happens all the time.
Yeah, it happened recently. But I'm really tired of the society that we have. And it's not a case of, and I really get burnt out on this mentality of, well, why don't you just leave then? It's like, dude, I served my country. You know, I ain't leaving. And I have a right to have an opinion as you have a right. You know, everybody has a right. And we can disagree and still be friends, like, I don't know. Well, that's a good, I guess, transition here. Not that we disagree, but a little bit of controversy, maybe. So I would like you to please elaborate, shifting gears here, on your stance in regards to cannabis legalization.
That's a big subject.
Yes.
It's I'm a very vocal person about cannabis legalization, as I'm sure you've seen,
Hmm.
and it's crazy to me. It's been since 1937, so however many years that is, over 80 years that we've dealt with the prohibition and
Hmm.
the lies that we've been fed, spoon fed by our government and elected officials and police officers, and it's all false, 98% false information.
Hmm.
It's crazy that people are so afraid of it, that people have the negative mindset about it these days with legalization. I think there's 14 legal states at this point and 36-ish medical states. So things have definitely changed for the better, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in
Yeah.
that. But it's coming along, and there's a lot of people that I've talked to over the past couple of years that I have educated them and gotten them to change their thoughts about it and open their minds to the fact that it's not the devil's lettuce or the all the negative things that people call it. And
Sure.
it's not going to cause people to go jump out of buildings or cause people to rape people or cause people to
Yeah.
murder people and all these things that they put out there over the years. It's helping far more people than it's hurting. I have personally 11 years of experience with it from personal use. And I know hundreds of people, if not at least 1,000 people that I personally know that have used it. And I don't know a single person that it's negatively affected.
Sure.
I cannot say the same about alcohol. Look
Well-
at the legality of alcohol and look at the legality of cannabis. I was just talking to one of my friends that's currently serving in the military, and he's having some issues with sleeping at night. And he said he has previous experience with cannabis before he joined the military. And he said, if I could just use that, I'd be getting far more sleep. I'd be a better soldier.
Sure.
And it's just our society doesn't allow it, and obviously our military doesn't allow it yet. I do firmly believe that they will allow it in the future, and that it will be treated the same as alcohol does.
Well, they've got to get past the federal,
Right, but it all comes down to money. It all comes down to control. If you look at why it became illegal in the first place, it was because there was corporations that were against it because it risked taking over their businesses. So, and then they lobbied against it and got it passed that it was illegal, and here we are today. So,
Sure.
a lot of misinformation and propaganda later. It's crazy to me though because of the medical benefits that it has, and it's nothing to be afraid of. I don't
Sure.
think children should use it by any means.
Yeah.
I think it should be regulated the way that it is now here in Illinois. I'm able to go to the dispensary and purchase it knowing that it's from a regulated and safe source and knowing exactly what's in it, what the percentages are. They go from seed to sale, so every single item you purchase, they get tracked all the way back to the seed that they used to grow that specific plant or that specific strain. And that's the way it needs to be. But at the same time, the prices that we're paying on the legal market here in Illinois are so high that people are using the black market still. So they need to lower the prices to snuff out that. And there was over $500 million of tax revenue last year in the state of Illinois from legal sales. I can't imagine how many were still used on the black market, though it's still in the billions.
Sure.
And the crime and negativity associated with that needs to stop, but that's not going to change until they bring the prices down to the point where you could go to the store and buy a joint, if you will, the same as you can go buy a can of beer.
Why do you think that? So, if the science is there, and there's obviously quite a few states that have legalized, like you said. What I guess is what has brought on this negative stigma? I mean, is it you said it was kind of like companies, but like how were they bringing on this stigma? I mean, were they doing media? Like kind of
Absolutely.
explain
So there was
some
mass
of.
production of newspaper articles back in the 30s. There was multiple movies that were made to depict it in a very negative way, saying it was up there with like heroin and meth and things of that sort, that it caused people to have paranoid schizophrenia and, like I
Yeah,
said earlier, the murder and rape and all these crazy things that just are not a reality of what it actually is. But today, now we have companies like Pfizer and other companies that are lobbying against it because they know the potential that cannabis has, and it will bring down their margins for the amount of money that they're making
sure.
with all their medications that they're putting out there. When in reality, it's a lot of poison that they're putting out there, in my opinion. Um, yes, there are medications that people need, but I don't think that we need to be pushing as many medications as we are in our society. Going way back to our fitness conversation, we need to be pushing more of the health aspects as far as your eating and exercise instead of trying to push all these pills. But the tobacco industry is also against cannabis. The alcohol industry is also against cannabis, and they have very deep pockets in our politicians for obvious reasons. They've been around forever, um, and it's going to take time to weed them out, pun intended.
Sure. Yeah, I also share a similar view on like the medication front. I don't know that I focused on this too much until after I kind of had this epiphany after I was already grown up. But when I was younger, I was diagnosed with ADD, and I think I still have it. But I've found ways in my adult life to manage that. And none of those ways, or I would say very few of those ways, involve a specific medication. And um, what I'm going to say is like my son was also, being diagnosed with this. And then the immediate thing that was said, by the doctor, and I'm, kind of a little annoyed about this, but I don't want to air out all the laundry or anything. But point being is like I'm completely against putting him on any medication. I'm just going to teach him the things that I learned to get past it without medication, because ultimately, in my mind, I think of, once again, like it's not necessarily in this case human suffering, right? Like I don't think my son is necessarily in the short term going to suffer by taking this prescribed medication. But one thing that I do think is that you're kind of not fixing the problem there.
Right.
You're just drugging a kid up and then saying, haha, now he can concentrate or something like that. And it's like, well, yeah, but I can get him to concentrate by just having a schedule and having mindfulness checks where we sit down and, like I had explained to you later when we were talking while I was setting up, essentially like just things that kids wouldn't know. Like you're not taught these things, just like fitness. You're not taught how to use your brain. That's why you go to school. That's why there's, all of these things in life about expanding your mind and, becoming, a quote unquote better individual, always improving. But it just seems bizarre to me that the first thing that people want to go to is this easy, well, just have the kid take a pill, because I don't want to sit down and meditate with him or teach him how to meditate. I don't want to sit down with him and essentially teach him how thoughts come into your mind and how those can be distractions. Like we have this, I teach him this stuff when I do see him, is essentially we have this this book, and the book has this analogy, right? So we sit down and we kind of just get quiet, because he's an 8-year-old. You got to be quiet, otherwise it's just going to be, especially if he has ADD, it's just going to go all over the place.
Right.
So we get to a quiet room and I sit down and I read these stories, and they kind of all relate to kind of anxiety in this book. And because he is young and he has like all these different anxieties, well, it has this scenario or this kind of analogy where it says, imagine in your mind that every thought that pops into your head is a flower in a flower garden. And you're sitting there and you're looking at the flower garden, and the flower garden is essentially your mind. Some of the thoughts are flowers, and you should keep those, while other thoughts are weeds, where you can pull them out and throw them to the side.
Sure.
The weed will still be there, and you can still acknowledge that the weed sits there, but it's no longer messing with my flower garden. And then I can then continue observing, knowing that the weed is sitting off to the side. I can continue looking at the flower garden, which in this analogy, for those that are lost, uh, are good thoughts, things that are positive or things that are useful. So like in his younger case, right, I say, hey Drake, go clean up your room or something like that, and then he decides to walk around in circles and play with his toys for 15 minutes. And then I explained to him, and this is just like low-hanging fruit, you can use this as an adult obviously, but the point is like, as an adult you wouldn't like sit yourself to the side, okay Brandon, like we weren't very productive there, we aren't doing that. We're just thinking, okay, I noticed that I was supposed to do this task, and instead think back, what did I just do in the last 15 minutes?
Was it productive?
Right. Was I, doing this or that? And if you're able to just have time, obviously there's a time and a place to do this. You don't just like, okay, I'm driving, we're going into recollection mode and then wreck into somebody or something like that. I like to just go sit in a quiet place and not meditate or anything, but just recount things that have gone on during the day.
Right.
Doesn't take usually that long, 10 or 15 minutes in a quiet place, and then just say, how could I have done better? And just try to, and I've used this analogy a bunch of times, but I think it's really good, but like be a Mr. Spock. Have like that magnifying glass or that, that machine or, device that essentially scans everything down, and you're scanning your day and saying, okay, right there, you know what? I need to stop forgetting my phone in my car when I go to work, because when I get all the way into my office, and this is a personal thing, like, but just a good example, like I've thought about this recently. Sometimes I forget my phone in my car, and then I typically get called by contractors and other people because I'm, electrical engineer on that phone. So
Right.
I get all the way into my office. Dang it, I forgot my phone. And then I have to go get in a Kubota. We have a Kubota, and I'll have to drive all the way out. And it's like a huge waste because, first of all, I wasted essentially a trip all the way in there without my phone. Then I'm wasting the trip back, and then the trip back again. And then it's like, okay, now after I've wasted, and I'm serious, like I work like kind of far into the plant. So it's like you've wasted 45 minutes of your day by this mistake, right? So that's an easy low hanging fruit. Hey, I need to start not forgetting my phone in the car, but this can translate to everything. I mean,
Sure.
and I was guess more explaining for the audience there, but we don't have to talk to each other like 8-year-olds.
Okay, Jason.
You were not that productive. Hopefully my boss doesn't watch this and is all like, it pops up on my review. He's like, I have evidence.
Right.
And he just goes to the podcast.
Let me show you this clip.
I've noticed that you keep forgetting your phone in your
Right.
car. So, kind of along the same thing, and just maybe a little bit more of elaboration, or elaborate a little bit more. Why is legalization specifically important to you?
So I was diagnosed with epilepsy when I was 15, and I was put on medication from 15 to 17. And by the time I was 17, I was honestly a suicidal zombie. And I was put on experimental drugs at the time. Now they're well known and widely used.
Hmm.
But I was not myself.
You're emo, Brandon?
It was bad. It
Yeah.
was a really dark spot. And that's not the person who I am, nor the person I wanted to be.
Sure.
And thankfully, I took myself off of those medications and started just flushing my pill in the morning instead of taking it.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, during that same time is whenever I started to experiment with cannabis with a friend, and my seizures stopped. So I went from having daily seizures. When I was put on medication, I went from having daily seizures to having like weekly seizures. They would mess with the doses up and down to try to get them to stop completely, and they never did. And by the time that I was on Keppra, is what it was called, it was still weekly, but not stopped. So then started flushing those and started using cannabis. And since then, in the past 11 years, I've only had 7 seizures.
Wow.
So there's a ton of research now that goes with, epilepsy and cannabis. And I'm a firm believer that cannabis has changed my life and saved my life, if you will. And so I'm a very big advocate to try to get others to realize that it's not just some recreational drug that people use to get high and get stoned and do stupid things. Because once again, I've literally never seen a single person do something that's hurt themselves, hurt somebody else, or negatively affected the rest of their life while under the influence of cannabis in the 11 years of using it. Never once.
Sure.
Can't say the same thing about other legal substances that people can currently go buy as much as they possibly want for very cheap prices.
Mm-hmm.
But look at this plant that has been here for
You're fine.
thousands of years, that people have used for thousands of years, that only has been illegal for the past 80 years. Before that, it was widely used as medication, in the 1800s, and it's widely documented that it was. So it's crazy to me that more people don't know that, and that people don't look at the reasons why it became illegal, and that's not common knowledge, but we all just think it's the devil's lettuce and this is terrible stuff and don't do it, DARE and everything else that was around when we were in school. But like I said, times are changing, and I think that people's perception is definitely changing for the better. And but in a town of like Nauvoo, we just recently had, about a year ago or 2 years ago, a city council voted against allowing it to be in town. So there's still towns like Nauvoo that are still against it and still have that negative mindset about it. But we can have multiple bars in town.
Yeah. Well, Nauvoo doesn't have bars anymore, does it?
Well, just one, I guess, the Wine Barrel.
Oh, okay.
But we have the oldest winery in Illinois, ironically, but we can't have cannabis. That is way more helpful than harmful. And one of their arguments was they didn't want the younger people getting a hold of it, and that just even shows more their uneducated views on it, because you have to show two different people your ID when you go in order to get any of it to begin with. But I know at least 10 different places I can go in town and get it on the black market right now.
So if you think about it, this thought literally just popped in my head. And I'm not one of those people that just says literally all the time. I try not to, but literally, no. A lot of people have said that, like in our current cycle, and I just thought of this, that, who cares if somebody lies on television, or who cares if, say, the president lies or a public official lies or whatever. Who cares? It's just a lie. Lies are powerful, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because cannabis is illegal due to lies right now in many states. Yeah. It's crazy that people would not see this distinction, I just don't understand it.
I question, all the politicians that are still against it. I question whether it's due to the money that they're getting to say the things that they do, or if it's truly the beliefs that they have. But I'm in the boat that I think they're being paid to have their views, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't think people can be that naive and that blind to the facts of how it became illegal with the hemp industry and everything else that happened in the 30s. I just refuse to believe, with the knowledge that I have about it, with the resources that are out there for everybody to have, the internet, there's very many places where you can get information out there. I think it's due to money, and I think that's what the major backing is behind cannabis.
So have you reached out to any public officials about like kind of your stances, and have you like asked them at any point to just, hey, you're kind of spreading some lies there, guy?
Right. I mean, I've been to especially in Nauvoo, I was at the city council meetings. I went to one that they held in Macomb, and I was very vocal about my opinions and my thoughts. And I've reached out to a couple different representatives that I've never gotten anything back from them ever, urging them to legalize and to change their thoughts and views. But I think they just turn a blind eye and ignore it.
That's kind of unfortunate, because obviously they have staffers. Somebody read your stuff.
Yeah.
It happened. They just decided not to answer back.
I'm sure you've heard of Normal.
I have heard of it, but that's the legalization in Illinois, is that?
That's countrywide.
Oh, okay.
So there's Normal for each. We probably should look up what it actually stands for. But they have one for each state, and then they have the nationwide. But they are the cannabis advocates that are trying to push for legalization. And they regularly send out emails that you can directly email your representatives with basically something that they've already came up with, and you can add to it, but then you put your name, your address, and all your information into it, and it goes directly to your specific representative in your area. And I'm very I'm very adamant about sending those out on a regular basis too.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll have to look that up. I didn't know about that.
Yes.
So, what is your opinion on? I guess you've already said it, but I know that you don't like this word. What is your opinion on weed culture?
So first off, weed is a derogatory term.
Yes.
So is pot. So is marijuana.
Mhm.
Um, I only use the term cannabis, but as far as weed culture,
Mhm.
I think the movies how they depict it is true and false. You know, there's people out there that are the typical stoner, if you will, but like I said, the hundreds of people that I know that use it, I don't know a single person that doesn't do their job, that neglects their family or neglects themselves.
Sure.
But there's definitely people out there that use it more than they probably should. But there's people that use caffeine more than they
Yeah.
should, that use chocolate more than they should, that use many different substances more than they should.
It's
So,
people that use too much water.
yeah, you can die from water.
Yeah.
That's the other
Yeah.
huge thing is you can literally not die from consuming too much cannabis. It's impossible, you know, and
Yeah.
it's ridiculous that it has the Schedule 1 legality that it has.
Once again, lies upon lies, right?
Right.
So, I recently watched a video in which a Rastafari elder, Rastafari, from Jamaica. Sorry if I offended anybody, but I think of Rafiki when I hear Rastafari. I think like anyway. I won't explain. Anyway, a Rastafari elder from Jamaica explained why he does not ever smoke cannabis or marijuana. He still consumes cannabis, but explains how methods of smoking it are impure and how pharmaceutical growing methods have instituted impurities into the plant. And I'll put this video down into the description. I welcome it's a really interesting video. It's kind of hard to understand the guy. I recommend putting the captions on, but I want to ask. I already asked you to kind of look at this video. What was your opinion on on his I guess his opinions? What did
Sure.
you think of it?
From the research I've done, there has been no increased chances of like esophageal cancer or throat cancer or gum cancer or anything like that, where you see with cigarette smoking because there's no additives the way that they have in cigarettes versus cannabis. But I could see that putting smoke into the lungs is not a good thing. So I would agree that it's not as pure as using edibles or
Sure.
cooking with it or things of that sort.
So the Rastafari, their whole culture and religion, and like I said, it's kind of hard to understand the guy, but essentially they think that anything that is not just made naturally, like they're the most organic of the organic freaks out there, which
Sure.
I kind of think that's a little bit of a scam, but they don't sell it like American organic or whatever. It's not that. It's just they eat roots and non, I guess, domesticated plants
Sure.
specifically because for one, they do it because they think it makes them pretty healthy. And I don't know that I've seen too many fat Rastafari or whatever. And I think that a lot of them do have a pretty long lifespan.
Right.
But that being said,
Given their condition or their circumstances and where they're from, absolutely.
sure. I mean, I think a lot of cultures are kicking our butt in that area, but um, they also are very strict about, like, for example, he talks about in there that, like, the cannabis, and you'll have to elaborate on this, the cannabis that we get here in the United States doesn't have, like, the gum, is what he calls it. It's not like the same plant, really. Like, it's a completely different plant than what they grow there on this kind of area for Bob Marley. It's like I don't know if it's a shrine or what it is. I don't know, but he said in this area with Bob Marley, they grow plants there that still have like the natural what cannabis is in nature. And he's saying that when we, as a country or, pharmaceutical places or whoever grows cannabis, they're making it so that, yeah, it's a much more potent plant. But do you think that there's any potential drawbacks to kind of changing this plant over time so that it is far, far, like, for example, I mean, I think I saw something to the effect of if you bought if you bought like cannabis in 1970s,
It's like 3%.
yeah,
Or
the
something like that.
3% per, for percentage of THC, and now, I mean, what do we see on the typical?
Typical anywhere from 16 to 30.
Yeah, so I mean that's a huge difference, and
But I question that too. I question their methods to test that back in the 70s, whether it was the 3% or if that's just another political stance that they have to try to make it sound worse than it is.
sure, okay,
You
I
know what I
never
mean?
thought of it that way. That's a good point.
So I have family members that have been around since then, that have been smoking since then, that would agree that things now are more potent, like the concentrates and things like that, but the flower would be similar effects as far as smoking flower. There's same
And
effects.
what do you mean by flower for the audience?
So just the actual plant itself, like the buds.
Mhm.
If you think of cannabis, if you're not experienced, just a bag of weed. We'll just call it that because that's what our society knows
Sure.
it as. But then there's concentrates where they actually take the THC and extract it from the plant and put it into a concentrated form.
Mhm.
So it's upwards of 70% to 99%.
Wow.
So there's extracts that are the oils and the vape pens and things like that you can have that are much more concentrated. But given my experience, those are nothing to be worried about. I've had things that are 99%, and it got me high quicker, but it wasn't like it was a completely different experience or that it was something uncontrollable or something that I was afraid of or something that made me do anything that I wouldn't normally do.
Sure.
It's just a more concentrated form, and but that's the thing with cannabis. Personally, I've never been out of my mind. I've always been still able to control my actions and my body movements and things like that. I think the perception that people have is many people try to correlate it with alcohol because that's what our society can relate with.
Mhm.
Is many people in our society has been drunk before, so they think of being drunk and how out of control and unstable you can get on alcohol.
Mhm.
Even if they've never tried cannabis, that's what they try to associate that feeling with. And since our society has made it seem like it's worse, they think it's got to be worse than being drunk off my butt. So
Sure.
it's got to be this crazy, terrible stuff that we shouldn't do or touch, and our kids shouldn't be around it. And,
Are,
it's
are those cops glasses that they have you put on?
oh my
Are
gosh,
they
that's the
correct?
dumbest thing I have ever seen in my life. Seriously, that is the biggest joke ever. Like that is like what? Who came up with that?
I mean, that's what they use to teach our kids, though.
It is, and
Yeah.
it's total false information.
Sure.
So I can tell you that I'm able to function 100% fine
Yeah.
using cannabis, doing anything.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be afraid to do even anything important while under the influence. Would I want a surgeon using it before a surgery or a pilot using it before a flight? No,
Probably not. Yeah.
no, and they shouldn't. And
But in their free time, why do we
exactly,
give
it
two craps?
it shouldn't be an issue if they choose to off hours. Same thing with anybody that holds a CDL or somebody in the military or a police officer or firefighter, EMS, doctor, anything.
Right.
They should be able to use it freely whenever they want off of the outside of the hours that they're going to be at work.
So essentially the same as alcohol.
Correct. And if they're using it during hours, the same as alcohol, they should be dealt with accordingly and
Sure.
taken away from that position.
Right.
And I think it's not that hard of a concept to grasp.
Yeah.
But we're not there yet.
Yeah.
And it's mind blowing to me that it's not dealt with in that way.
Sure. So many religious prophets are recorded in history tripping on all kinds of various substances and nobody bats an eye. Yet there's still somewhat a large anti cannabis movement out there in modern culture, especially in the United States. Why do people not make a distinction between kind of like these religious, I don't know, idols, I suppose? I'm not sure. I'm not going to assume what people see. Like, for example, Muhammad, he very openly was taking hallucinogenic substances when he went into the cave and meditated for all those years and came out with the Quran.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like people from those age, from that age, most of them couldn't even read, better yet, have logic and philosophy on their side. So, I mean, certainly there were still skeptical people and they were not stupid. It's just we have a lot of knowledge that's given to us that is certainly helpful in us saying, raising an eyebrow when Mr. Muhammad, you know, uh, trips balls and hey, it was probably a good situation for him. I feel happy for him, but why should we believe that he saw this, miraculous thing, and then that miraculous thing caused him to write all of this book and all this other stuff? And it's like, I mean, that's a cool story, bro, but it sounds to me like you had a good trip, not that something legitimately happened there. And today, people don't even, you know, think of that or even taught that story.
Right.
But yet they are always taught, from an early age that, well, if you don't be hanging out with that kid because, his dad's a stoner or something like that, or don't be doing this or don't be doing that because they're just bad trouble. And it's like literally all they do is just smoke cannabis. It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. Should people fear losing their job because they smoke cannabis? Because a lot of people do.
So currently, many people do, obviously, but they shouldn't.
Yeah.
That goes back to, we shouldn't be in the situation we're in. If we would have not had the prohibition in the 1930s, think of the amount of progress we could have had in the research and development of cannabis, and how many more people we could have been helping in all these years, instead of locking people in prison cells and taking them away from their families, taking away their right to vote,
Sounds to me like a lot of human suffering.
Yes, absolutely. It's unfortunate, and I'm thankful, like I said, to get to the point where we're at today, having legal states and the government's taking a much more hands-off approach with it and saying that they're not going to prosecute people, and they're giving people expunging their records. And so I think they're making progress. It's just, once again, mind-blowing that it's taken this many years to get to the point where we're at today.
I think that the approach that they even have. So like what you said makes sense, right? So you go to work and, on your lunch break, you just, take a bunch of bong hits or, shoot up some heroin or snort some coke or something like that. And it adversely, obviously, affects your job. You ought to be fired.
Right.
But at the same time, I'll ask you a question and then I'll get to the analogy here. And you don't have a boss, but let's just imagine that Brandon Motley works for a corporation and a boss walks up to your door. Knock, knock, knock. Hey, Brandon, I really want to go over and kind of look around your house, make sure it's all tidy in here. Would you let him in?
No.
So why do we allow companies to put a needle in our arm or make us urinate into a cup?
Right.
They don't have a right to do that. But yet our society normalizes this, where if I'm to go get a job, I have to go pee in a cup, and then they get to analyze what chemicals were in my body, essentially. And I really think that if there's all these conspiracy people out there, that are just like, oh man, don't put any rules on wordings and don't do this and don't do that because it's dystopian. Have you read 1984? We're in it right now.
They just want us to be sheep. They want us to do what they want us to do and not question it, And I think the drug testing is a prime example of that. We should have the freedom to do what we want outside of the hours that we're working and outside of our military hours and outside of any hours. It shouldn't be up to them to decide what we do in our free time, as long as we're not negatively affecting anybody else around us.
Right.
So I think the whole war on drugs has just been so bad in our society, and I think that locking people up is not going to change anyone. It's going to, if anything, make it worse. I think there's states that are currently having clinics and things where they're trying to treat people and help people and put them around more of a positive environment to get out of that lifestyle, instead of putting them in a cage and expecting them to change, because that's just simply not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not. And I think that that's a whole other conversation in of itself. I mean, the whole justice system, the entire jailing and prison system,
private prison system,
which hopefully they're going to get rid of that.
Right.
I think they should have done that a long time ago. See, once again, we have a society in which they literally So I said it. Dang it.
Literally.
We have a society in which people actively have motivations to put people in jail, essentially. Like they're
But it's
making
crazy how
money off
people
of it.
think it's okay to.
Yeah.
Like it's
Well,
illegal, so they shouldn't be doing
Hey,
it.
good for that guy. Good on you, dude. Go buy that Maserati, right?
It's crazy.
That was a laugh of despair, by the way. So, last question. In many cases, and we've kind of touched on this, but many cases, speaking out can automatically lose your job. Targeted urinalysis, like we talked about, is a common method, and I've seen this firsthand. Well, not firsthand, secondhand. I've seen this done to other people. It's a common method for businesses to get rid of employees that they don't like. How do these people, in your opinion, and granted, we're just two guys talking, but in your opinion, just having all these ideas and have thought about this for, a long time, how do you think that these people can, make a difference or kind of change their situation?
It's tough because until the government comes out and regulates it and legalizes it, it's a very touchy subject. They're on eggshells if they bring it up. Yeah, that's what it is, honestly. And they should be able to openly speak about it the same way that we say, let's go grab a beer after work.
Sure.
But that's just not the case. You just can't talk to your boss like that. You can't, you just can't,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate because of what it is. And
I couldn't even just, in my profession specifically, I couldn't even imagine hearing somebody at work say, I mean, I'm not going to say a real person's name, but just for example's sake, like, hey, Steve, you feel like going over and passing a joint after work or something like that?
Right.
Hey, Brandon, do you want to join us?
Did you get some Bio Jesus?
Yeah, or something like I would never in a million. That would be like, and the culture too. Like if somebody was overheard, it doesn't even have to be a boss that hears it, right? People would be like, "Oh, now we got that no good stoner in our midst,
you're
right?"
Have a drug test.
Yep.
And that person's gone. And the reality is even if they did go do that, they'd be much better off and safer doing that versus other things that we could get legally.
So this is something. There's all of this stuff, and before we end here, I'm just going to make a final little point. Is there's a lot of scare right now in cancel culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
That right there is cancel culture. Sorry. I mean, if you fire people or allow a society where our whole entire society is built upon this thing called money, and the only way you can get money is either have a business, manipulate the stock market. There's other ways, but just for the simple sake, have a business or work for a business. I'm sure there's edge cases there that I'm not thinking of, so I'm sure I'll hear that in the comments someday. But point being is, it's just mind-boggling to me that people don't jump onto that. Like, why are conservatives right now, and we already know, and maybe we're beating a dead horse here, but I'm frustrated that conservatives are upset about cancel culture, but are perfectly fine with people getting fired for their jobs because they pop on a THC in their bloodstream or in a piss test. It's bizarre to me. Like, do you not, like, you're so close. You're so close. But cancel culture really isn't, in my opinion, a thing. Like, the people that get canceled don't really get canceled. I mean,
they've almost become more popular
in some ways. I mean, who was that? I know Brian would know this. He's really big into the, comedians and, that type of stuff. But there was a comedian that was like flashing people or something like that. And I can't remember if there was a fiasco where and I don't want to, I'm just paraphrasing here, and I haven't even said his name, so I guess it doesn't matter. But he essentially was in a room and asked this person, it's super weird, but he asked this person, this female or woman, do you mind if I masturbate near you? And she said yes, and then got offended afterwards. But the point being is, super creepy behavior easily meets the cancel situation,
sure.
Right? Like people are like, dude, I don't know that after hearing this story, I feel comfortable watching you on stage after I've heard that you just kind of sat down on a bed and masturbated next to a stranger.
Right.
Like, it's just a little weird. But yet, he's doing shows, he's packing the seats. And I'm not saying that I personally care that much, but it falls in the same, like, I don't really personally find the guy overly funny in some cases, so he's not my cup of tea anyway, so no big loss on my end. But these people aren't really, in my opinion, very few of them are just truly getting canceled. They're just rich people that have a little bit of a hit to their popularity, maybe, or they get some negative, reaction. I'm just kind of,
As
whatever.
they say, negative press is good press, right?
Right. But I think that the real cancel culture that we see today is, like you said, this prohibition that we've been fighting of cannabis, and businesses thinking that they can just control your lives. And I'm getting, especially tired of that. And it feeds all into all the stuff we've talked about today. It's been a good conversation.
With how prevalent cannabis is in our society, whether people are exposed to it or not, I think there's a lot of people that are very naive about it. They just associate it with bad people and they think only bad people use it. But if everybody at once came out and said, yes, I've tried it, or yes, I use it on a regular basis, I think it would be astounding to a lot of people and very surprising to many that they're like, oh, I never thought that person would ever do it. But it's like that person does it, that person does it, that person does it, that person does it. And I think it'd be just much more acceptable if we just came out and just talked about it. But
well, the stigma, beyond just the propaganda. I mean, anybody, anybody that goes to jail gets a stigma.
mm-hmm.
I mean, so making it so that people go to, and I would even say, and this is going a little broad here, and I know we're trying to end this, but let's keep talking for here real quick. What do you think about legalizing, making it so that decriminalizing all substances?
So that goes back to the states that have done that. And I think it's having a positive impact on that culture because it's bringing them into a positive environment to get the help that they need to get off of those substances versus locking them up or having them go to the black market to get it where they're just going to be given who knows what.
Right.
And it's not regulated. So they have things like fentanyl and other things that are cut into it that are killing people.
Yeah.
So having access to a safe and reliable source of those substances, whether they want to use them, I think is a step in the right direction. I don't condone anybody using heroin, meth, or anything like that.
Yeah, it's not the point of
Right, but people are using it, and people need to get help to get off of those things. And the current way that we're doing that is not the way to do it.
I'd say that's kind of the biggest misconception is like when you say, hey, let's decriminalize all, I really don't like this word, but drugs, substances. And the reason I don't like the word drug is because, like, by the same token, you could say that caffeine is a drug. Yep. So what are we really talking about here?
Right.
I would rather just call it what it is, a general substance.
Mm-hmm.
And some are, just like I would over where I work, we have safety data sheets, or it used to be called MSDS, material safety data sheets, but they changed it to SDS for some reason. Maybe material was redundant, I don't know. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is it's like I treat all substances, with whatever they may be, chemicals, all things many things could be called a chemical. Water is a chemical. So like just saying these trigger words, chemical or drug, I really don't like that in our society because it kind of breeds, like you're saying, with quote unquote weed culture. It breeds this negative stigma about things
instantly
for no reason.
Right.
It's like, dude, I'm talking about a substance here. I'm not talking about.
The most dangerous thing about cannabis is the legality of cannabis. That's the most dangerous thing about it. Being caught with it is the most dangerous thing about it.
Exactly.
Not actually using it.
Right. But just to explain, and I'll finish this thought here. In places where they have completely decriminalized, and I want to say they did it in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct on that?
Yep.
Okay. So they did it in the Philippines, and I want to say I've seen a story, which I'm no expert on this, but I looked around and I'm curious about it. And they said that in the explanation, it just made more sense. It's not like we're legalizing so that everybody can just, woo, go buck wild or whatever. And it won't happen that way because most people understand, just like I understand if there's a radiation sign and it says, don't walk in this area, radiation, probably shouldn't go there.
Right.
Like same thing. Not going to take heroin in my arm because I know all of the problems that might arise from that. And I understand that people have problems with that. But the point of the decriminalization portion of it is if you do get wrapped up in this bad substance or whatever, you can have a positive way out. These people, they go to the treatment centers and they're treated like a friggin' human being and not a number in a jail cell.
Right.
And that helps because, like, if you put them in a jail cell, you're feeding in and creating and perpetuating your own problem. And I'm not saying you, but us. We're perpetuating all of our own problem by saying, you must go to jail. And then you also get all of the stigmas that are attached to going to jail. Then when you get out, you're probably going to be depressed. And you're probably going to, it doesn't even take a psychologist to figure all this stuff out. It's like, you go to jail, you get out, you're probably going to be depressed. You're probably not going to have a good time getting a job. You're probably not going to make good money.
You're probably going to get back on drugs.
Right. And you're probably going to get back on drugs because you're going to go back to that same cycle that was your crutch in the previous, And it blows my mind. It blows my mind that people can't just go beyond, like, people just stop immediately at this person does heroin. Yep. And I see a negative stigma on that. And they don't think of any of the other ramifications of anything that happens beyond that because they're just like, well, I don't have to see it. I don't have to deal with it.
They also don't think of why they even got to the point of using heroin.
Sure.
That's a whole another subject there.
Yeah.
But with my group of friends that I know that use cannabis, we use alcohol far less than we used to. I don't know a single person that has gone onto heroin or has gone onto meth or the whole gateway drug correlation is total false information. I think it's like I said, just more helpful for anybody than harmful. I've never seen it be harmful for anybody. Not once.
Well, we've had a long conversation. Do you have any last thoughts? Any last statements?
I appreciate you having me. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully we do it again.
Yeah, we will. So, and I'll switch over to the audience here. Thanks everybody for watching. If you made it this far, looks like we're going on around 2 hours, close to 2 hours. If this is content that you like and you're watching me on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. And if you're watching me on Facebook, please share, like, subscribe, or I guess you can't subscribe there. Like and share. And as always, thanks for watching. Bye.